Welcome to Beacon of Speech. What is Beacon of Speech? We sell freedom of speech to everybody. Well, almost everybody. We're not selling freedom of speech to the terrorists today. I am Fred Hunt. Across the table from me is Ted Coley. Hi, Ted Coley.
Hey, Fred, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful.
We're in yet another location.
We're in yet another new location. Today we are in Ted Coley's living room. So, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like we are desecrating the halls of excellence here?
No, no,
There's no ghosts?
yeah, there's nothing sacred about this place.
I'm Fred Hunt, he's Ted Coley, and who did you buy? Do you know who you bought this house from when you bought it?
I can't think of their name.
You could call him Mr. X.
Yeah.
Now, did you buy it from him or did they die here?
They died here. I don't know if what it was an older lady.
Uh-huh.
Her husband, I think, had passed away a few years before, and then she died. I don't know if she died in the house or
in a nursing home.
Yeah,
or
I
hospital.
don't need to know that.
Yeah. So, it's Fred and Ted and Mrs. X haunting the halls.
See, the thing is that I think we talked about this before. I don't have a problem like living in a house where somebody died, as long as it was peaceful.
Yeah.
Like, I would not want to buy a house where I knew somebody was murdered.
Right.
I wouldn't do that.
Like the Manson house.
Right.
Okay. Or, I'm sorry, not the Manson house, the Tate house.
Yeah, Sharon Tate.
Yeah. See, now we're flashing all the way back to the 60s. Nothing like connecting with the young people and talking about the 60s.
Yeah, they're like, who is Sharon Tate?
Well, every year, Ted, without fail, you cannot forget about Charles Manson because somebody's always coming up for parole.
You know what's amazing? He's still alive, right?
Oh, yeah, he's still alive.
And he's, what, about 82 or something?
Yeah. And if you want an interview with him, you could call him, say, hey, Charles Manson, you want to do an interview? And he's like, yeah! So talking about Charles Manson, that leads us into our first topic. Now, this was Ted's idea, and I thought it was a great idea. Now, Joe has basically ditched us because he had twins. And he says, I do not want to do the webcast with you because I want to be a good father. Now, what's up with that, Ted? And he wants to be a good father, so we need a third person. We need a third wheel. We need a guest. Who would be a good guest for our show? And we were brainstorming, trying to make Beacon of Speech better.
I came up with the idea of inviting Donald Trump on the show.
Now, Donald Trump is a media whore. Is that not true?
Yes.
And he seems like he is very easily tricked. Would you say that's fair also?
Well, if we're going to get him, that's going to have to be true.
Well, that's why I want to flesh this out. First of all, we cannot tell him that we only had, like last week we had 3 listeners. Now, 2 of the listeners...
But maybe those 3 people are 3 people who haven't heard his message yet.
That's true, that's true. One of those 3 was my daughter, and the other one was my daughter's friend, and they were making fun of us, which is always awesome for listeners. You know, it's the whole old Howard Stern theory. People who like you listen for what? People who like you listen for 45 minutes and people who hate you listen for an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess at least they're listening and making fun of us every day, right? Now, back to Donald Trump. So, should we try and send something to his people to say we have the top-rated webcast and... Right now, we probably have the top-rated webcast in Garfield Heights, Ohio. Would you say that's probably true?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think... do you know anybody else who's broadcasting here?
I don't. Not that I know of.
And we could say that we are we're on the cutting edge of societal evolution, as Rush Limbaugh would say. And we are connecting with the youth, which is also true. And we could say... He's not in it for the money, so it's not like we can trick him. With money, you know, those checks would bounce anyhow. We'd probably violate something. So, how should we try and reach his representative or one of his kids? Or how do you think we should flesh this out?
Well, one thing I do know is that we're flexible. He can come over here, or he can come over your house, or we can go out to, what is it, Trump Tower?
Yeah, we could go to Trump Tower, yeah. So let me get you on the record. Donald Trump he wouldn't listen to this. Say his son listens to this. He's like, well, if they are the #1 rated show in Garfield Heights this week, which would probably be true.
I mean, because he's going to have to win Ohio.
He's going to have to win Ohio. He's going to need every vote, right? So we could do it my house, your house, or if his son is willing to fit the bill, put it on the Trump card, we are willing to go to New Jersey or New York and
stay in a five-star hotel.
Yeah, stay in his 5-star hotel. We're not staying at any of those crappy Trump University places.
We're not going to stay like where the place that Steve stayed.
Oh yeah, yeah. Steve stayed in Philadelphia with the 160-watt incandescent bulb hanging from the wire,
flickering.
Yeah, flickering, and he's like, "There's like blood stains on the wall." But so we are not willing to stay. We're saying a minimum of a 4-star. We'll bring the headsets. We'll bring the Apple computer.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we are all willing to do this. Now, so is there any? Will we say they shuttered up the casino? So we won't be saying at the casino, right?
No, I don't think so.
So we want to spread Trump's message here, and we want him unfiltered, because this is Beacon of Speech. We want to hear what he has to say, and we'll go off topic once in a while, like we do. Like what's a good like I was listening to Donald Trump, and he had an interview with Trevisano, and who is the big guy on WTAM, and they said you get 5 minutes. It was like the day before the Ohio primary. Did you hear that interview?
Yeah, I think I did hear that.
And he says, Donald, I only have 4 questions for you because I only got 5 minutes of your time. And then the last question was, can you bring back legalized gambling? Because everything is all about, you. Everything, all people care about is themselves. Mike Trevisano loves internet gambling, and then it got outlawed. And then all of a sudden, that's the most important thing in the world. Right? So he asked Donald Trump about internet gambling. And Donald Trump is like, are you being serious right now? Well, I'm all for, gambling and loosening the things, but I got to research it and see, why they... And he danced around the subject because...
Trump did.
Yeah, Trump danced around the subject because Ohio was like, what, 15th or 18th state to have a primary, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was probably the first time he had been asked about internet gambling was by Mike Trevisano, right? So we'll throw him curveballs, but not like gotcha curveballs. Like, what do you think of...
Yeah, we come in peace.
Yeah, we come in peace. So when we throw curveballs, it's like, what do you think about Adult Swim cartoons on Cartoon Network? Loosening language restrictions on overnight programming or something.
No, I'm just thinking the Ohio angle is a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Because, a Republican has to win Ohio.
Yes.
And you really have to change Cuyahoga County.
Right.
Because Cuyahoga County is what? 2/3, 3/4 Democrat?
Right.
So if he wants to change that tide,
yeah,
we're better to start than...
Yeah, and believe it or not, Cincinnati actually has a lot of Republicans in there. I didn't know who's the old orange guy who used to be Speaker of the Senate.
Oh, Boehner?
Boehner, yeah. They said that, he's from suburban Cincinnati, and, he was getting vote margins in suburban Cincinnati that were like Saddam Hussein was getting on his last term. Oh, I got 98.7% of the people and they love me. John Boehner was getting the same thing. You're like, how in the hell is this guy pulling 90-some% in his district? People... Go ahead.
Now, what was he getting in Cuyahoga County?
Oh, Boehner?
Yeah.
Oh, no, his district...
Oh, just okay.
Yeah, right. His district was in Cincinnati, all around Cincinnati. Not Cincinnati proper, but like the suburbs out to the Indiana border, out into the sticks.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, because he was in the House.
Right.
Yeah.
I said Senate. I meant House. I apologize. And I'm glad that I said that orange guy who's the Speaker, and you picked it up right away.
Oh, yeah, I know exactly.
So I'm glad that you're right on the same wavelength.
Yeah, I know exactly who you're talking about.
But yeah, I'm willing to talk to just about anybody. Now, going back to Manson, I don't really think that Trump is like Manson. And I wouldn't want to talk to Manson because he scared the crap out of me.
Mm-hmm.
But there is one serial, and now I don't mean to go off the deep end, but there is one serial killer that I would like to speak to. Do you know who that is?
Wait a minute, don't tell me. Is it David Berkowitz?
No.
David Berkowitz?
Ted Kaczynski.
Oh, okay.
You know why? And this is my whole thing. A lot of serial killers did it for sexual gratification or because they were crazy and stuff. But Ted Kaczynski, right? When he bombed those people, in his head, he thought he was a revolutionary. You know what I mean? In his head, he was the sane one trying to stop the encroachment of technology.
Yeah.
Right? And he wants to do interviews. But he goes, I'll only do interviews with people if you do it under the premise that I'm not crazy. You got to understand that I'm sane. I'm the sane one in an insane world. And I'm like, that is, to me, it's intriguing because, and I'm not trying to diminish victims, I apologize, but he didn't do it for sick gratification, and he didn't do it because he was like, woohoo, I'm, natural born killers. You know what I mean? And to me, he's like, you know what? I reject technology. And then he walked the talk. Like, I'm going to live out we all should live in cabins in the woods. And then he went out and lived in a cabin in the woods.
So he got caught, like, what was it, around 96 maybe?
Yes.
And how long was this going on? Like 15?
I think 15 years. Yeah. And they never caught him. And the FBI is like, oh, we caught him. He didn't catch crap. His brother, right? When they released the FBI was stumped. They said, we cannot find this guy. This guy is like in the midst of the shadows, right? And Ted Kaczynski, and again, all they knew was the Unabomber. He said, I'll stop bombing if you print my manifesto. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
They printed the manifesto hoping for clues, and Ted Kaczynski's sister-in-law, his brother's wife, read the manifesto, right? And she went to Ted Kaczynski's brother, and she said, oh my God, you read this manifesto? This sounds just like Ted. Right? And not Ted Coley, but Ted Kaczynski. And he read it, and he's the one who tipped off the FBI. And they're like, do you know where your brother is? He's like, oh yeah, he's in a shack in Montana.
Okay, so his brother didn't know he was doing that.
No. But the wife said she had read some of this stuff, and she had listened, like me and you talk all the time, right? And if you saw something in a paper, you'd be like, holy cow, that sounds like Fred.
Yeah.
But, and that's exactly what happened. She's reading this manifesto, and she goes to her husband, she goes, this sounds just like your brother Ted. That's crazy. And that's how they came around. And then the FBI is like, we caught him! Well, technically, he didn't catch crap. And again, Ted Kaczynski's mad at his brother to this day because...
I kind of don't blame him.
Yeah, because he's like, oh, thanks for nothing, and your dumb B.I., wife. You know what I mean? Screw her too.
How many people did he kill?
I want to say like 5, but I don't. Off the top of my head, I don't know. The problem is I think he sent like 20, and then like some of them were caught, and then some of them went off like in the cargo, in the cargo bay, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I just remember Saturday Night Live when who was the guy who used to imitate him?
Oh, I want to say it was Will Ferrell.
Yeah, it was Will Ferrell. Was
it? Okay. Yeah, because he made Ted Kaczynski seem really funny. And so yes, so for Beacon of Speech, since Joe keeps ditching us, okay, we do not talk to sexually deviant serial killers, okay? But I will talk to Ted Kaczynski, and we are going to hold out for for Donald Trump.
So in other words, we're not going to talk to shallow serial killers.
Yeah, we have to draw a line in the sand. You know, kind of like Obama in his first term. He's like, this is the red line. And then whatever country passed it. And he's like, what red line are you talking about? The red line you were talking about. What red line? I don't recall talking about a red line. So our line in the sand is, between Manson and Ted Kaczynski.
We'll only talk to serial killers with principles.
Yeah, yeah. We want them to be seriously, what's the word I'm looking for? Principle. They have to have principles. So, I don't want to get bogged down in serial killers, but I'm going to change the subject. Donald Trump, Donald Trump or representatives, if you are listening, please contact us at beaconofspeech@gmail.com. You can address it to Fred, or if you don't like Fred's tone, you think he's too smart alecky, Ted is definitely more of the even-tempered of the two of us. So you'd be willing to do a one-on-one with Trump too, if
I would love it.
Okay,
that would be great.
So we got that out there. This is the topic that I want to lead with, and I want to flesh this topic out with you. And it's really been bothering me, and I must have read 12 articles about it. Okay? Ted Coley, in your whole life, what are 4 or 5 of your favorite classic rock bands in your life?
4 or 5
of your favorite classic rock bands.
Classic rock bands. Well,
and I know The Who is one.
Oh yeah, The Who.
Right.
Led Zeppelin.
Now we don't even have to go past that, because I want to talk about Led Zeppelin. They've been in the news basically every single day for the last 2 weeks, and I know because I have read so many goddamn stories about Led Zeppelin this week. It pisses me off to no end, because when we started Beacon of Speech, who encroaches on freedom of speech in this country? The left with their political correctness, and the right with corporations. And the Led Zeppelin case is both the left and the right just putting the screws to freedom of speech in America. Right? Now, I'm going to throw this at you, and then I'm going to play off of you.
You're going to throw the pen at me?
Well, I'm going to throw... God damn it, Ted! Throwing the pen at you. What do you know about Led Zeppelin versus Spirit?
Something to do with the copyright for Stairway to Heaven. Now, I don't know, is Spirit accusing Led Zeppelin of ripping them off?
Yes.
Okay,
so
because it's Stairway to Heaven.
Correct. Now, you don't know too many details. You
No,
just
I
know
don't.
Vaguely. Okay. Now, you are one of the biggest Led Zeppelin fans. You just said it, one of your favorite bands.
Oh, yeah.
But they broke up in 1981. Okay? Now, let me turn this around. What do you know about the band Spirit?
Almost nothing.
Okay.
I just know that there was a band, Spirit.
Did you know Spirit before this lawsuit in 2014?
I think I had heard that name.
Okay.
But, no.
All right. Let me start. I had never heard of Spirit before this lawsuit. Now, I had heard about this lawsuit a little bit last year that they were bringing it. I have never heard of Spirit. Now, you love classic rock more than me. That's why I'm asking you. What do you know? Because the only things I know is from the 10 articles I read this week. Right? Now, here's what happened. In the late 60s, okay, Spirit was a psychedelic band, not unlike, and the one article I read compared them to the Jefferson Airplane. Okay? So you know what kind of classic rock we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not talking about hardcore. We're not even talking about the Beatles. We're talking about a band like the Jefferson Airplane. Okay? They wrote a song called Taurus. Okay? Now, I went and I listened to Taurus, and I listened to the beginning, right? And the beginning minute and a half. Their lead singer is Randy California, and it sounds like a normal, average psychedelic song, the first minute and a half.
Is that his real name?
No. I don't even know what his real name was. Lead singer, songwriter of Taurus. Okay? Then, in the middle of the song Taurus, there's a guitar solo. right? But instead of a searing guitar solo, it's a very quiet, dreamy, psychedelic guitar solo. For about 35 seconds, it sounds like the beginning of Stairway to Heaven. It just does. And then it comes out, and you know what it sounds like.
So the solo sounds like the beginning of Stairway to Heaven?
The solo sounds like the... And then they come out of the solo, right? And then they go back and they finish the song, and it doesn't sound like Stairway to Heaven at all.
Yeah.
Right? I had never heard this. Okay? Now, I went on YouTube and I researched it, and afterwards, maybe we can go look at... I'll tell you what it is. You can listen to it. But there is definitely a resemblance between the guitar solo and Stairway to Heaven, right? The beginning of Stairway to Heaven in the middle of Taurus. Okay? Now, Led Zeppelin toured for, I guess after Taurus was released, for the next 3 months, sometime in that 2-year time frame, Spirit opened for Led Zeppelin. They were their opening band. Okay? So Led Zeppelin heard that song. whether it was subliminally or unsubliminally. Okay? But Ted, you've been to concerts before. The band that plays first, of course the opening band's going to hear them.
Yeah.
Right? And so about, I think it's 2 or 3 years after Taurus was released, maybe it was more, okay, because again, I don't have the facts in front of me, Stairway to Heaven came out,
yeah,
and Randy California came out and said, that sounds a lot like Taurus, but he never did anything about it.
Yeah, we're talking like 45 years ago.
Because we're talking about, the Taurus was 1968 and Stairway to Heaven was what?
71, I
71,
think.
72, somewhere in there. Okay? Now, here's the problem. Randy California, and this is what makes me so mad about this case. It's like going down the rabbit hole. Do you remember when Anna Nicole Smith died?
Yeah.
And she was suing everybody was suing each other. Nobody cared about crap. All they cared about was getting that oil money. And this is the same exact thing. So Led Zeppelin releases Stairway to Heaven. I read that Stairway to Heaven, by itself, some accounting firm said that song alone probably made Led Zeppelin $580 million. Just that song. Just on royalties, touring, album sales, everything. Now, again, it's estimated because you have to roll it into today's dollars, exposure, blah, blah, blah. Right? Spirit, they went on throughout the 70s and they kind of wobbled on, and they were a lot of bands from the 60s that weren't that great. They turned people over. Randy California and his stepfather, which is odd, his stepfather was the drummer, right? So the two of them kept Spirit alive, right? And as people came in, the keyboardist changed, the bass guitarist changed, they kept going, just the two of them. They're the only two people who were in Spirit from the beginning to the end, Randy California and his stepfather.
There was an end, they're not together anymore?
Oh, no. Well, that's where I'm going with this. Randy California, in the liner notes to the greatest hits of Spirit in 1978, said the least Led Zeppelin could have done was said thank you for my riff. And it was an offhand remark, and it was literally one sentence. Okay? Randy California in I should have wrote it down. In the late 70s, early 80s, his son was drowning, and Randy California swam out and saved his son, which is very noble, pushed his son out of the rip current, and then Randy California died.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So the lead singer of Spirit is dead. Well, then who's suing Led Zeppelin?
Is it the stepfather?
No, he's dead too.
Is it the son that was saved from drowning?
Almost. So we're running out of people to who's suing him. So Randy California's dead, and his stepfather, the two main guys in Spirit, they're both dead. Okay? another member of Spirit is also dead. The keyboardist, he's dead, right? So there's 2 surviving members of Spirit. Well, they think they're getting paid, but they're not suing them. There's a rock historian, right? And he, to my knowledge, he's a lawyer, okay? And he thinks that Spirit is the greatest band ever created. Just like I think Alice Donut is the greatest band ever created. This idiot thinks that Spirit is the greatest band ever, right? So in the year 2014, he became the executor of the Spirit catalog and the Spirit estate. In the year 2014, Jimmy Page remastered Stairway to Heaven, and he said, please buy remastered Stairway to Heaven. You know that Jimmy Page locked himself in the basement and remastered all their albums in the last 5 to 10 years, right?
Yep.
So now, this lawyer who thinks the Spirit is the greatest band ever, he's a rock historian, he is suing Led Zeppelin in the name of Randy California's surviving son that he saved in the ocean, and in memory of the Spirit estate, because they never got to what's coming to them. Now, what in the world did that lawyer ever do for anything? So now they're pulling Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, Robert Plant onto the stand. They say, tell us how you wrote Stairway to Heaven. Okay? Well, they're all pleading, that was 1970. We barely remember the 70s. And in their defense...
I would love to see that, you know?
Yeah. And their defense, and the defense of... and this is where I want to kind of hash it out with you, is their defense is they stole from a lot of people. Okay?
Oh. It's a good defense.
Well, but let me put it this way. My favorite Led Zeppelin song is When the Levee Breaks. And I've heard them say over and over, that's an old Negro spiritual.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't write that song. Somebody in New Orleans wrote it in the 1910s. And then
so the reason you can get away with that is that nobody owns it? It's
yeah,
like there's no copyright or whatever.
Right. Nobody owns it. Just like nobody owns, Happy Birthday anymore. That's now in public domain. So their whole argument is that they took the descending A minor guitar line for Stairway to Heaven from some old guitar line from the 1900s. It's an old blues note. And he goes, not only did we steal it from this old blues song that's now in the public domain, but Spirit stole it. He said it's a very common, it's
actually not a bad argument.
Yeah, and so their whole argument is, it's a descending A minor, song progression. Well, you used to be in a band.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm asking you is that a fair argument?
Yeah, I think it might be. I don't think that's a bad argument.
Because their whole thing is...
So in other words, Spirit didn't come up with that either.
Right. And their whole argument is, if Randy California was here, the reason Randy California didn't sue us for 40 years before he died is because he knew where he got his bass line from.
Yeah.
Or guitar solo, or however you want to put it.
Yeah, so it's almost like you saying, oh, this place sucks, and then somebody suing you because, well, I came up with that phrase, this place sucks. It's
right.
Like, well, how can you tell who came up with that?
Right. And this is the thing that makes me mad is that I'm going to go back to Randy California. If Randy California was that mad about it, why didn't he sue somebody?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And, people get mad at each other all the time. Like, I love Joe, who does the webcast with us. But if I got mad at him, I might make an offhand remark. Oh, that was nice of Joe to steal the idea and then, go do that webcast. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's public domain stuff. Everybody and their brother has a webcast.
So that trial is going on right now?
It's going on as we speak. And one of the articles...
So they actually have to appear in court?
Because I actually saw some of the artist renditions of Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, And they said, Robert Plant's like, what's the famous thing he says? Oh, not guy, but what he calls everybody. Like, oh, brother, it's, I barely remember the 70s or whatever he says in all his interviews.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jimmy wrote that part. Oh, that's from an old blues line from 1942, and we used to listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I was under the impression that, because I don't, what's the name of the song? Taurus?
Taurus by Spirit.
So in other words, Taurus doesn't start off like
Nope.
Stairway to Heaven. So
No.
it's not the start.
No.
They're saying the start of Stairway to Heaven was stolen from the guitar solo in...
Yes. And again, it wasn't a Searing solo. It sounded like Stairway to Heaven. It did, because I heard it. But again, the song doesn't sound anything like Stairway to Heaven. It's like a normal song, and then they break into like a 38, 40-second Stairway to Heaven riff, and then they go back to the song. And that's their whole argument. They're like, well, everybody got their stuff from the blues musicians. That's what rock and roll is based on. It's based on the blues.
It's like, what is it, that Jefferson Starship song? I think it's Jefferson Starship, Jane.
Yeah, I love that song.
There's a part in there where it sounds like My Woman from Tokyo.
Yeah.
Just those few notes.
Well, and that's the thing. Some of these, and this is where I give the most credit. The article by the Daily Beast, okay, dailybeast.com, was by far the best, because I read like 6 articles that were all the same, saying Spirit is suing Led Zeppelin.
How much is the lawsuit? Have they specified?
Well, that's the trick. They said that they could win, but just like going back to Donald Trump, you know how Donald Trump sued the NFL in part with the USFL, and then they won $1. You remember that?
Who won?
The USFL and Donald Trump. They won.
$1?
Yeah, they won the case against the NFL, but they won $1. So there's a lot of shades of what is winning, and I'm using air quotes. The jury could come back and say, yes, Led Zeppelin stole it. You get $1. Because you stole it too, right?
Yeah.
Or they can say, listen, we can't go back in time. The statute of limitations, it was written in 1971, but from the reissue, they remixed it, and then I believe they released it online after they remixed it, right? They digitally enhanced it or whatever. Randy California gets royalties on Stairway to Heaven from 2014 on, because you did a digital remix using his music. You see what I'm saying? So you don't get to go back in time, but starting in 2014, Randy California gets all that money. Well, of course, it's going to go to Randy California's son and the guy who's suing on behalf of the estate. And again, Randy California's son, to my knowledge, is not the one spearheading it. It's this guy going, oh, I'm doing it for Spirit because I love them. Well, if you're the executor and then you win, you get the money.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, well, yeah, but technically, if you want to go that way. So again, it's all about the money. And the Daily Beast is one who uncovered some of this. And Daily Beast said, you should hope that they lose. You should hope that Spirit loses, because if Spirit wins, basically from now on, bands they'll have to go to their label and say, here's a song we wrote, does this sound like anything? And then they got to run it through a computer.
Yeah.
And then, again, if it's a cover, it's one thing. You know what I mean? But they're like, oh, no, the Red Hot Chili Peppers did this bass line in 1992, so you can't release a song. Well,
not to interrupt, but you've heard of George Harrison being sued for My Sweet Lord.
Right.
Which you've heard My Sweet Lord.
Yes.
And the claim was that he ripped off He's So Fine.
Right.
You've heard that song too, right?
Yep.
And George Harrison said the same thing. He goes, I feel like, and keep in mind, this was back in the 70s.
Right.
he said, I feel like I need a computer to run all my songs through to make sure they're not,
Right.
And I guess George Harrison's first wife said that he wouldn't let her listen to the radio in the house because he didn't want to subconsciously plagiarize anything.
Yeah, and that's what happened when we were talking about Prince when he died. He said he enjoyed music, but he didn't want to steal from anybody, so he purposely didn't listen to things that were in his genre. He enjoyed things out of his genre that he would never play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
Prince took his art very seriously.
Well, and they also said that, like when Paul McCartney wrote Yesterday, I think it kind of came to him like in a dream.
Right.
And he got up and, went to the piano and, it all came out, and it was obviously a hit song.
Yeah.
And they said he kept going around to everybody, like John and George, and saying, is this something else? In other words, it can't be that easy that I came up with this.
Right.
Am I ripping something off?
And you know that I'm a hack. I don't have any talent, right? But I dreamt, and I know he didn't steal it from me, but I dreamt about a song called Punch in the Face, right? And I'm like, that would be a great song. And then one day I heard the song Punch in the Face by Ministry. I'm like, this is a great song. It sounds like what I dreamed about. Well, it made me think. Well,
so it was just the title that was the same.
It was kind of the same.
What you dreamed the melody and everything, and it was the same.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But the whole thing is, I know, and it makes me think that maybe I had heard it like on iTunes. They'll give you a 30-second preview. Maybe I heard it on the preview. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then I bought it like 6 months later. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, hey. But I remember that Punch in the Face by Ministry. Now, I'm not suing them because I don't have any talent. I couldn't have done it. I'm glad that he did it. And I know he didn't steal it from me. But I understand what these guys are saying. You're exposed to music.
Well, Keith Richards said that, because they were asking him how he comes up with stuff. And he said he feels like an antenna.
Right.
Like this stuff is out there and it just comes through him.
Yeah. And sometimes, when I talk and I write stuff, I don't feel like anything I do is original. I feel like everything is like mixed up. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I have like almost no original thoughts. Like,
well, nobody does.
You have a pile of mishmash, and it's just the way
I
interpret the mishmash and you interpret the mishmash. Like, we're all filters in some way. I like to think that I have very few original ideas.
Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that you don't have
I
any, but
I appreciate you agreeing.
I agree.
I don't have any original ideas.
No, but nobody does when you get down to it. I mean,
and that's what the Daily Beast said. They said and again, it was a great article. Of the 10 articles, you look up the Daily Beast, look up the case Spirit versus Led Zeppelin, and they're like, if Led Zeppelin loses, all these record companies, they're going to be like, well, you can't release this because this 8 seconds sounds like this. You can't release this because this is... You're compromising the art. And again, we're not talking about Ice Ice... You know how much Ice Ice Baby sounded like...
Under pressure, yeah.
And then that smartass, Vanilla Ice comes out and he's like, oh no, it's slightly different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They never sued Vanilla Ice. You know what I mean? And they said that one of my favorite Beastie Boys albums, Paul's Boutique, and you're familiar with Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
They said Paul's Boutique could not be made today, meaning 2016, because the Beastie Boys used over 100 samples on that recording. And they said no record company would release it today because they get their brain suit out. But they're already compromising the art. Now, there's one thing to rip somebody off blatantly, like Ice Ice Baby, and then say, oh, I didn't rip him off. You know what I mean? He knew what he was doing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But a 5-second line here, a 10-second line there, or a 30-second line there.
So he didn't ask for their permission before?
No. But don't forget, the Rolling Stones sued the Verve and basically broke that band up when they had that Bittersweet Symphony song come out.
The Rolling Stones?
Yeah, the Rolling Stones. Because they came out and they said, oh, why is this such a hit? And they're like, oh, yeah, we took a loop from the Rolling Stones and then just looped it. Rolling Stones saw that and they're like, you can't just loop our...
Do you know what song they took it from?
No, I don't. I just know that it's Bittersweet Symphony. That's the name of the Verve song. But I don't know what they took from the Rolling Stones. But in the case of Spirit, and again, I'm reading about Spirit, like I care, right? Their first album was produced by Brian Hansen. You know who that is?
Brian Hansen?
Yeah.
Produced the first Spirit album?
Yeah.
No, I don't know who Brian Hansen is.
Dr. Demento.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, that's what we're talking. We're talking about... We're not talking about the top producers of the day. No offense to Dr. Demento.
We're not talking about Phil Spector.
Yeah, we're not talking about he was in the studio with Phil Spector and they're like, oh, we're going to get this or else I'm going to hammer you over the head with this. You know what I mean? From all accounts, Brian Hansen was not, the hold the gun to the artist's head type. You know what I mean? But this is why I'm just like stunned, because you feel for Randy California, and maybe he was frustrated, and people get frustrated, but I mean, are you really gonna take, like, basically you're compromising art at this point? You're restricting the art, and that's the case that the Daily Beast was making. There's got to be a thin line between a 40-second descending A chord and just flat out plagiarism. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the stuff in the article from Daily Beast is how I felt. And the guy who wrote the article, me and him, we never met each other. You know what I mean? He felt the same way because we were exposed to the same BS. Lawyers trying to get rich off of nothing.
Oh, you should hear Michael Savage talk about like class action lawyers. He says they're like lower than drug dealers.
Oh yeah. Well, that's a whole. Not to change the subject, but let me use one of the things. You would know better than me. Cervical cancer. They say if you use baby powder to dry up your lady parts, okay, now you can sue them for cervical cancer.
I've seen that commercial. Yeah,
and they're like, oh, Johnson & Johnson knew. And I'm like, I really find that hard to believe.
Yeah.
And baby powder, I get, if you get cervical cancer at 80, everybody dies of something.
Yeah.
These ladies are not getting cervical cancer at 18. You know what I mean?
Yeah, how do they prove that that's what caused it?
Yeah, and that's why... And now I don't know for a fact, maybe baby powder is the devil's, powder. But hasn't baby powder been around for like 150 years?
I would think so. I mean, all my life I've heard of it.
Yeah. And that's why, and not to beat the Spirit Led Zeppelin thing to death.
And that's what you use like when you're changing a baby's diaper, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I've heard of it my whole life.
And that's why the whole Spirit Led Zeppelin thing, you're not doing it for Randy. You're not doing it for Randy California. He did not, for 40 years, let it burn in his...
Now, when those commercials come on TV, like for what you were just talking about...
Oh, the Johnson & Johnson.
Right. Does that generally mean that the lawsuit has been completed and there's a fund where...
I think they're still suing them.
Okay.
I think they're like, the first judge ruled in our favor. Jump in the boat as we go to the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Because Johnson & Johnson's like, we've been around for 100 years. It does not cause cervical cancer. Right? And now we're just being jerks because you're a guy and I'm a guy and we're like, well, who cares? It's cervical cancer. We're not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, but I find it hard to believe that there is a 100-year conspiracy against women by Johnson & Johnson. So again, it goes back to the letter of the law type thing. are these lawyers being jerks, or are they really doing it for the public good? Like, I find it hard to believe that baby powder is poison. Would you say that's fair?
Well, you know what it makes me think of? What's the thing that LeBron used to do?
Yeah, he would take chalk and just throw it in the air.
He doesn't do that anymore, does he?
No.
No, because then they say that was dangerous too.
Yes, they said that's not good because you could get chalk in your lungs, and a whole bunch of people were like, "Don't do that." But when I was a kid, I remember reading stuff like everything you would do, like you would caulk something. Say you caulk something in your basement.
I just caulked something like last week.
Yeah, and on there it says the stuff in the caulk has proven to cause cancer in California.
Yep.
And when I was a kid, it like freaked me out. I don't want to touch this caulk. And my dad's like, just caulk the bathroom, you lazy bastard.
Well, as a matter of fact, it says that on there, and it also says to smooth it out, use a wet finger.
Yeah.
Which I just did literally a week or two ago. I did that. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, should I have done that?
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's too late now.
Yeah, and it's like...
But it says on there that you could do that, and then at the same time, it says it could cause cancer.
And that's the whole thing. I'm like, well, it's not like... But caulking my bathroom, I should not be thinking, well, is this like doing black tar heroin?
I mean, the way I always look at stuff like that, the way I try to rationalize it is, well, even if it is bad, it's not like I do this every day. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing. They're like, well, and heating and cooling, and were you exposed to this at your job, the mesothelioma? And it's like, oh.
See, what usually happens to me, like when I'm doing stuff around the house, is that I do it first, and then afterwards I read.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I wasn't supposed to cut that board. I was supposed to score and snap it.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
There's like dust all over the place.
Yeah. Now I'm like that. I can't read it first, or else I won't do it. So
yeah, it's hard enough getting motivated to do stuff like that, and then you read that and you're like, well, now I'm definitely not doing it.
Yeah, I'm definitely not doing any of that. So, but we were talking about Led Zeppelin, and I wanted to talk to you. I am setting up the Beacon of Speech website, and I'm hoping to put it live this week so people can find our awesome webcasts.
Is that like the same thing you tried to do a few months ago?
Oh, no. We were trying to do the live webcast. What I'm trying to do is set up a web page, and I want to have it live tomorrow. And then you could go to YouTube and hear us talking, or the blog, which I started. And so we should be promoting that. And one of the things I want to do is I want to do the oral history of Waysted Space. So next week, we're going to do more of that. But I want you to... Waysted Space is a band Ted was in from how many years?
No, only 1 year.
Oh, I thought you were in there 2 or 3 years.
No, it was basically about a year.
Oh.
It was basically most of 99.
Now,
the year 1999.
Did Waysted Space spawn any other bands? Like, they always say the Beatles. What was the band they were in before the Beatles?
Well, I mean, it started out, they were the Quarrymen, and then they were the Silver Beatles. And
yeah. So you could have been the Quarrymen, right? And then your guitar or your bass player went on and they went into the Black Keys.
It's possible. I haven't been in contact with those guys, so I don't know. Maybe they started an offshoot.
So it did not go Wasted Space and then Black Keys.
No.
We're not in a band with those guys.
No.
Okay.
No, I just wonder if like one of those guys happens to if one of the surviving members of Wasted Space happens to come across, like our webcast, and here's us talking, if there will be a lawsuit generated from that.
I didn't give you permission to use the name.
Maybe the executor of Spirit will file a lawsuit on their behalf.
I was just reading in Scene magazine. It couldn't have been more than 2 days ago. And they were talking about the music of Black Flag. And I'm like, oh, well, that should be good. well, who's playing the music of Black Flag? Would that be Black Flag? And then I looked in the article and they said, well, they can't use the name Black Flag because the guy who owns Black Flag doesn't want them using it. So they're going under the name just Flag with the 4 bars. And then they're telling people we're singing the music of Black Flag. I'm like, oh my Lord.
Yeah, the brand or whatever.
Yeah, so by talking about and that's the whole funny thing is, say you're Led Zeppelin. I understand that there's a brand because you made $100 million and people, love you and everybody owns the Led Zeppelin box set and stuff, right? But like Black Flag was all about punk. We're gonna break stuff. We're gonna scream and we're gonna yell. And somehow 30 years later, they only talk through lawyers. It's like, well, that's not really the punk way. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of punk bands like that. I think the Dead Kennedys, Jello Biafra only talks to the rest of the Dead Kennedys through his lawyers. But that's a little different story. We don't want to get into the story of Dead Kennedys, but
I just wonder what, like, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, I wonder what they think about having to go through this 45 years after the fact.
Yeah. Because off the record, because, me and you talk, besides doing the webcast, right? Off the record, they got to be saying this is just bull crap.
Yeah.
Just flat out bull crap.
It would be like me being hassled for something I did when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah. And Ted, let's put it this way. We'll use Waysted Space as an example. In 1999, so you guys only existed for a year, right? And you did do some covers, right?
Oh, yeah, almost all.
And say you did a cover, and then you got sued, again, 1999, and then you got sued in the year 2039 for a cover you did because you made $500 that night. And you'd be like, that mother effer.
We probably made $500 total.
In a year. But no, I intend.
See, that's the thing. If you don't make any money, everybody leaves you alone.
Well, yeah, and that's the catch-22 with the movie. And the movie that I made and you were in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody hassles me because nobody watched it. Nobody listens to the webcast. I can say whatever the hell I want. I got total freedom. Now, my goal, and I hope your goal is too, where we have total freedom, but we also get paid. Well, good luck with that. You know what I mean? I've already made jokes to Joe Kaufman and Ted that, I already said his last name. But, that, maybe when I'm 60, I'm just going to be at the bullhorn, with the bullhorn at the corner doing Beacon of Speech. I keep hearing, we're going to listen to your show. I think people expect it not to be me. Like, hey, that would be a good show if I didn't have to hear your voice. And you talked about freedom of speech issues the whole time. So, but yeah, so next...
So you could have like a voice-over guy doing your material?
Yeah.
Like, how like they have body doubles for movies?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm gonna write out the Beacon of Speech episode and to be honest with you, I know that that'll work, okay? Now ask me, how do I know that'll work?
How do you know that'll work?
Okay, now I'm in my 40s and I'm dumpy looking, okay? I'm not as good looking as I used to be, okay? I was never great looking, okay? But I worked for Top Tens for 4 years. I was a freelancer. And 2 of my articles got on the TopTens.net website where they did my words. And then they had a young British guy who was 28 and good looking do it. I'm like, holy cow, whoever wrote that did real good. It doesn't even sound like me, but the guy who did it sounded much better with him talking. Number 1, he was good looking. Number 2, he was British. He made me sound smarter. I'm like, well, hell, I can be the writer and that guy can, do Beacon of Speech, right? Maybe I should hire him away from Top Tens. And he does a Top 10 list every day. And he's awesome. Like I said, the Top Tens did a great job hiring that guy. I don't know if he's a professional actor. If he's like, I do top 10, voiceovers, for $100 a week or whatever. But, he does a great job. So yes, there is.
It's funny how the British do make everything sound intelligent.
Oh, yeah. And I know from firsthand experience, because my wife is like, you wrote that? That sounds really good. And I'm like, yeah, I wrote that, but I can't come across like that guy does.
Well, it is their language.
Yeah. Yeah, we did bastardize it. Yeah, it was funny. We went to the Indians game last night, right? And it was rock and roll fireworks. And it was fireworks synced up to rock and roll music of everybody going in the Rock Hall this year. And they didn't do, it was a good job. It wasn't a great job. It was kind of a, I probably could have thrown it together. Not the fireworks part, but the music splicing and stuff. But I was just thinking.
Now, they synced it up to everybody going into the Rock Hall this year. Is that like Steve Miller?
Steve Miller, Chicago, Cheap Trick, Deep Purple, NWA.
Okay.
And then they played NWA music. I'm like, they better be very careful with what NWA songs they're playing. But I mean, every single song, you knew, Ted. You know what not the NWA songs, but all the classic rock songs and, Dream, they stop, they do a pause, and then Dream Police comes on and then a fireworks spray out. It's like, oh, I get it.
Would you consider Cheap Trick to be a little bit punk?
No, I think of Cheap Trick as 100% classic rock.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Cheap Trick is one of those bands, Jim Rome used to say it. When you go into the Baseball Hall of Fame, there shouldn't be an argument. Babe Ruth is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Ty Cobb is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Mickey Mantle is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. You say a name, it's the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Good. Right? He used to say it all the time. And he used to say, if you have to debate it, you probably don't belong. The only way you would debate it is, say, like for a Sandy Koufax. He was great, but was he great long enough? You know what I mean? And somebody in our era who would count for that is Albert Bell. Albert Bell belongs in the Hall of Fame, just flat out he does. But he needed a hip replacement at 31 years old. I mean, he basically played from 21 to 29. You know what I mean? And then he had to have a hip replacement. Well, he belongs in there. Was he great for long enough? And so it's the same thing with Cheap Trick. Cheap Trick always reminds me of the Jim Rome argument of, well, yeah, Cheap Trick is good, but I don't think of Cheap Trick as one of the great rock bands of all time.
Yeah.
I think of them like Peter Frampton. Like, they had a couple of good albums, and then they milked the crap out of it for 30 years.
Well, I mean, the only reason I asked was because on the radio one day, they were getting ready to play, like, 3 songs by Cheap Trick. Mm-hmm. And, the introduction was Cheap Trick combined, this with this. And
No, they're full of crap. Cheap Trick they were a good rock band. I would compare them to, like, Huey Lewis and the News. Huey Lewis and the News was a good band. They sold, like, 10 million albums of one album. And other than that, they were basically a bar band.
Yeah. Well, that's even Huey Lewis said that. I think I was watching the Behind the Music. And, they were huge for, like, a couple of years.
Yeah.
And he said he told the rest of the guys in the band, hey, enjoy this because we're not that good.
Well, it's not that they weren't that good. I shouldn't say that, but...
I mean, I think he meant for the level of fame that they had. We're just not...
But when you think of Madonna, as much as I hate Madonna, I understand why they put her in the Hall of Fame because she was a cultural icon.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the music. It was about, whatever. Mishmash. Right? But Prince deserved... Me and you would not debate whether Prince deserved to be in there. He 100% belongs in there. You say Prince, and I just assume he's in the Rock Hall. Frank Zappa. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Whereas Cheap Trick and Deep Purple are both bands where I'm like, yeah, I guess.
So I assume, like, you think of the Cars on the same level as Cheap Trick.
I think the Cars are better than Cheap Trick because the Cars had that You Might Think video where they were everywhere. I mean, they were like, the Cars were out just...
Now, what about Foreigner?
Oh, Foreigner's average rock band.
Yeah.
Um, Foreigner's average classic rock band. 38 Specials average rock band.
What about Journey?
Oh, Journey is a bastardization of rock and roll. Honestly, you know what Journey is? Journey is ABBA. Okay, they put ABBA in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They don't belong. Journey and ABBA are both. They should have their own light, somewhere between light jazz and Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame light.
Yeah, Journey is.
So they're like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame kids table.
Yeah, exactly. Kiss should have been in on the first ballot. Kiss was rock and roll for 8 years. They defined rock and roll, and that's why it shouldn't be that hard of an argument. Who's in, and the other argument is like we were talking about the Sex Pistols. Sex Pistols put out one album, Ted. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for one album. Well, you go back to the Jim Rome argument. Well, they were great for 1 year, but, that's why I think they're put... Now, Steve Miller, the whole thing is that Steve Miller had hits in the 1960s, right? And then Steve Miller was still having hits, Abracadabra, that was like 1986, right?
Yeah, 82, something like that.
He had hits for 15 years, okay? Whereas Cheap Trick, once they got past those 2 albums, they weren't having hits anymore. And the same thing with Deep Purple. You know what I mean? And who else? So you can make I will listen to the Steve Miller argument. I think they probably do belong in. And not to mention, when you think of iconic songs of the early 70s, everybody knows the Space Cowboy. Some people call me Maurice. And that's ingrained in the culture. Whereas I like Cheap Trick, but I don't think of Dream Police as being ingrained in American culture. I don't think it's ingrained in any other culture either.
So Van Halen definitely belongs.
Oh, yeah, definitely Van Halen. I mean, Van Halen was it from album 1 to 6. Until they got rid of Sammy Hagar, they were on top of the rock pile. And again, you could argue with me. You could be like, oh, Fred, you're a jerk. I think Cheap Trick was the best band ever.
No, I don't think that. I don't have anything against them, but I...
Well, I'm looking at the clock. I know that we dragged on about rock too long, so I apologize, Ted. But I do want to get... we adopted a hockey team, the Columbus Blue Jackets, and they came in 3rd from last in the whole NHL, right? Well, guess what happened to the AAA affiliate of the Columbus Blue Jackets?
Was it the Lake Erie Monsters?
The Lake Erie Monsters. They won the AHL Championship, which is minor league hockey's championship. So maybe in the next couple of years, the Columbus Blue Jackets will be good. Would you bet on that?
Well, we'll just have to stay tuned.
So we love the Lake Erie Monsters. Congratulations. Now, we always bring in a magazine whenever we do the show.
Don't you want to bring up the Indians?
Well, yeah, we could bring up the Indians.
They're still in first place, right?
They're in first place by 1 game. I went there last night, and that's where I saw the rock and roll fireworks show. And they took the Chicago White Sox and they dismantled them. It was 13-2, and they were so much better than the White Sox, just flat out. So they are in first place.
Now, you know what's happening tonight, right?
Yeah, the Cavs Game 7.
I assume your prediction is that we're going to win, right?
Yeah, I think they are. I think they're going to pull it out because I think the stupid curse thing, is going to end. And I think there's bad karma because I know you're not on Twitter, Ted, but you're familiar with what Twitter is, right?
Yeah.
Stephen Curry's wife, okay? And I'm not going to call her any names, even though when I put the headphones down at the end of the episode, I will call her names, just like Led Zepplin is calling the spirit guy names. She came out and tweeted that the finals are rigged in Cleveland's favor.
You know, somebody else mentioned this to me. Now, she wasn't saying this after game 2, right?
No.
When they went up
No.
2-0.
No. So after game 6, she said the finals are rigged for Cleveland. Now, let me ask you a question, and you be honest with me, okay? In your life, you're in your 40s. How many times do you remember sporting events being rigged in Cleveland's favor so Cleveland gets the call and wins the championship? Never. So let's just hypothetically say that she's right. Just hypothetically, right? Good. It's our turn.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, I don't think they are rigged because, like you said, she wasn't screaming this after game 2. If you watch that game was over in the first quarter. The problem was Steph Curry was getting frustrated and fouling the Cavs because they were down by 20.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he fouled out of the game, like a dumbass. And like I said, you know, Steph Curry does punk things just like LeBron James does punk things. You know what I mean? So I think that they're magically going to find a way to pull it out.
I just wonder if they do win, what's going to happen. Like, I think people are going to lose their minds.
Oh yeah, I think if they win, that they're burning the city down tonight. That's awesome because they're not quite ready for the Republican National Convention. So if they burn the city down tonight, they don't have time to fix it by the time the Republicans come. And that's why it's funny. So
I'm just thinking of the guy who does the downtown route.
Oh yeah,
Picturing them rocking his van.
Yeah. I got kids to feed. I got babies at home. Well, I do have. We'll go back to music in a minute, but I always try and bring up a magazine every week. Correct?
Yes.
And this week the magazine is People. Okay. Now my mom gave it to me, and on the cover is the world's most beautiful woman, the world's most beautiful woman, Jennifer Aniston. Now, do you think that Jennifer Aniston is the world's most beautiful woman? Would you agree?
No.
No. Now, People says she is. So already, before we even open it up, you disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go on the record with who you think it is, or do you want to keep that to yourself? It's not Kim Kardashian?
No. No, I can't decide right now.
Okay. Well, you can think about it. I think the most beautiful woman in the world is besides my beautiful wife. So the second would be this girl named Emily Ratajkowski. I can't even pronounce her last name, but she was in the Blurred Lines video, and she was on iCarly when she was a teenager. But now she's like 22, and that girl's like the perfect woman.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
I didn't know who she was until this year, and I'm like, holy cow. And she was like the most beautiful woman I've ever seen since like Jenny McCarthy when she was doing Singled Out.
Mm-hmm.
Not Jenny McCarthy like now, who's had 8 more operations, married a Wahlberg, and said don't vaccinate your kids. Old Jenny McCarthy, who was fun and playful on Singled Out.
Yeah, I don't know who I would pick.
So
But I don't have anything against Jennifer Aniston.
Oh no, she's a good-looking girl.
Yeah, I just don't think she's the most beautiful woman.
Well, number one, this is why I'm going to bitch about People, okay? You know how I always tell you about awesome magazines I read? First of all...
Well, because they're probably using, like, they're probably using other criteria.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she's successful, so that makes her beautiful. Or,
Yeah.
you know, she produces movies.
And everybody loves her. Everybody on Friends said what a joy she was to work with. Whereas Emily Ratajkowski or whatever, everybody hated her because she was, you know... I don't care about that. It says the world's most beautiful woman. You shouldn't weigh in all that other stuff. If I knew Emily Ratajkowski or whatever, probably I probably wouldn't think that way. I probably wouldn't think she was beautiful. I think about her like I do about Jenny McCarthy now. But anyhow, the point of my story is 2016's Most Beautiful Woman. So we agree that it's not Jennifer Aniston. This People magazine is 190 pages long. On the last page, there's an interview, a short interview with Patrick Stewart, who I like, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Captain Picard, he does a ton of voiceovers. He's a cool guy, I like him, okay? Under the interview, it says page 190. Out of 190 pages, how many pages do you think are ads?
Wait, don't tell me. 120?
95.
Oh, wow.
A full half of this magazine is ads.
Oh, so you counted?
Oh, yeah, I counted. Because when I was reading it, you know, when my mom gave it to me, I'm looking through it, and I'm looking at pictures of Rihanna and Jared Leto, you know, and Prince and whatever. And all I can notice is that there's almost no words. Like on this page right here, okay? One page of ad and all pictures, right? It's almost like a picture book, okay? And I'm like thinking, well, who edits this magazine? Who writes the stories? And I'm looking, and there's literally 100 people on here, okay? Well, you don't need any of those people. I could write everything in the People magazine by myself.
Yeah.
Okay?
Is that Kelly Clarkson?
Oh, for the Citizen Watch, yeah. So there's 95 pages of ads and basically 45 pages worth of pictures. There's almost no words. I'm like, what in the hell are you paying for this magazine for? And I mean, okay, you're not looking at people to read any articles, okay? You want to see pictures of people in their wedding dress and who's this fool? John Legend, that guy sucks, okay? But you're looking and there's like no words on the whole page. I can count the words. There's 20 words on this whole page. It's like, so as I'm reading this, I'm doing it in a critical eye, I'm doing it like, why would I buy this magazine? And again, I got it for free. And I was insulted by it because I'm like, I don't even want to read this and it's free. I'm like, who is buying this tripe? And we're not even talking about like the Star or the Inquirer. Would you say the People is one of the more well-respected magazines out there?
I would think so.
Let me say for the record, People magazine is garbage. When I'm done with this, I would take this, I'd wipe my ass with it. Because that Patrick Stewart interview, the last gift I gave, and then it's like 2 sentences. The last thing I lost. I lost my keys this morning because I'm 75 goddamn years old. Literally. How many sentences is that? Would you say that's about 6 sentences?
Where?
Right here? About Patrick Stewart?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't learn crap about Patrick Stewart. I learned more about him by watching Family Guy. So,
I just wonder if, like, you said half was advertisements.
95 pages out of 190
I
is
wonder
ads.
what Rolling Stone is.
Ugh. Well, that's another thing, is, you know, Rolling Stone, whenever I say I read stuff on Rolling Stone, I go to rollingstone.com, because I don't read Rolling Stone, the magazine, anymore. I'm going to leave this for you. I say this magazine is total garbage, and I leave it for 10, say you can read it. Aren't I a nice guy? So, but yeah, so if you have any taste, now say you're an old housefrau, you're 58 years old, and your kids don't come see you, and you have no life, and you want to have something in the house, so you know you can line your bird cage with People is perfect. But literally, I read that. That is straight out garbage. Okay, Ted. Also, besides, usually I have nice things to say, but I wanted to read that magazine and say, "Hey, Ted, did you read about this? Hey, Ted, did you read about this?" I'm like, this is garbage. Oh, and one of the other things I wanted to point out.
How often does that come out?
I think it's every week.
Wow.
Jennifer Aniston, right? She's in here as the Most Beautiful Woman, but she's also in like 3 ads as Oh, don't forget to buy Revlon. So not only are you buying it because she's on the cover, but she's selling you stuff, because she's on the cover. I'm like, that's quite a scam.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a bit of corporate synergy there. Maybe that's why everybody loves her, because she's a corporate team player. And don't get me wrong, I like Jennifer Aniston. I do. No matter who you pick on there. I'm just saying, I don't think she's the most beautiful woman in the world. It's just, that's, If they picked, Brad Pitt's second wife, if they picked Angelina Jolie, I'd be like, well, maybe she was, back in 2004 before the surgeries mangled her up, but she's not anymore.
Yeah.
So, there's ways to, look at it, If you want to put the most beautiful person on the inside, I guarantee you that's not Jennifer Aniston either. I don't think they were putting Mother Teresa on there. The most beautiful person in the world is Mother Teresa. You know why they wouldn't do that? Because Mother Teresa didn't sell Revlon. Aren't you glad that I'm getting back to the nice jaded self after we started slow? So, but I see your clock. Your clock says 5. I told my wife I'd try and get out of here by 5 o'clock. So, I thank you for all of your time.
Yeah. Thanks for coming over. It's actually getting comfortable in here now.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I'm fine. Right here, I'm fine. Temperature's fine. We're good. Water's good. My throat was getting a little raw, and then I didn't want to choke. And so I appreciate you sharing water with me.
Yeah, hopefully it was okay.
It didn't come out Flint brown, so that's fine.
Or it didn't come out green like the Iron Mountain water.
Oh yeah, that's funny too. So, and I'm sorry. We always have a song of the day. Song of the day. It's called Atomic, and it's by a band called the Truckfighters. If you get a chance, go listen to that. I listened to it for the first time this week. It was awesome.
Truckfighters?
The Truckfighters. They're like an old bluesy band. They're somewhere between bluesy and metal. They remind me a little bit of... who's that band? Oh, I'm drawing a total blank. In my head, I can see who they are. Wolfmother. They remind me of Wolfmother. And Ted's laughing at me because I don't think he knows who Wolfmother is. So... All right, well, this is it for Beacon of Speech. I thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.
Good night.